Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, wherever you are and whatever species that you belong to.
Do that up, Lucy. No.
I'm Paulie. Welcome to Say Goodbye to Crazy. Apparently somebody else wanted to welcome you too. Anyway, today, you know, this is the internet, folks. Things happen. Today, we're going to be talking about, on Say Goodbye to Crazy, we're going to be talking about the golden uterus, or what I like to call the gut, or the goo, if you like that one. But first, let me say hi to and introduce the human that's on the other side of this connection, and that would be the one and only Dr. Tara Palmatier.
Hello, everyone. Lucy, stop it. Squirrel intruders.
Well, we have squirrely problems here. Anyway, let's go ahead and launch into this, Dr. T. For those of you who have not heard the term, one, to let you know, again, shameless pitch, link will be in the low bar after this hangout, directly to pre-order our book, Say Goodbye to Crazy, which is due out on none other than Mother's Day, or for many of you out there, on Golden Uterus Day. And so let's start with a definition of what the golden uterus is. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. T, and she can give you the lowdown on these low women.
Nice. Nice play on words. Basically, golden uterus is a very snarky term for women who have I would say, a certain degree of narcissism around the fact that they are mothers, that they gave birth to children. Although I have worked with men whose golden uterus wives or exes didn't even give birth to their own children. They adopted them, and they still adopted this mentality. So it's basically a woman who believes having the title of mother or the status of mother makes her infallible, feeds her sense of entitlement. She believes that the children are her property or extensions of herself. And you see this particularly after a divorce. They want to be in control. They know best. If you remarry and have other children, you're still expected to put your ex first, and your children from your first marriage or your first set of children ahead of your current children, and all of your children should be equally important to you. It's not to say that the children that you have with a woman who has these issues should be less. Of course not. All of your children are your children. They are all equally important. But that is not what a woman with a golden uterus mentality believes. She believes because she gave birth to your first children that, you know, I don't know if they think they're in the Tudor dynasty or something, and that makes those children more important, and by virtue of that, her more important, but that seems to be it in a nutshell. They are also, I know we're going to be getting more women watching the show, and so we probably should have titled this, is your ex-wife a golden uterus, or is his ex-wife a golden uterus? A lot of the second wives and stepmoms I work with, they know this person all too well. And that's a whole other set of issues when you're the new spouse or the new girlfriend, and you've got a boyfriend or a husband who is married and has kids with a woman like this. They will treat you as if you are the lowest person on the totem pole, or believe that you're trying to steal her children or her role as mother, and it can be quite nasty. I've kind of rambled on. I hope I answered the question.
I think you answered it quite well. You know, I've noticed over the years too, Dr. T, that with so many of these women, that the signs are there well before the divorce. There is certainly a sense of ownership so for you guys out there that are watching this, if you have a wife that is generally has the final say about everything with the kids, you've not seen anything yet until you get divorced. We tend to talk about the golden uterus mainly in terms of divorce. One, that is post-divorce stuff is what a lot of the book is about. But in reality, aren't these also women who show signs in advance, if you're watching for them, that if the marriage ever comes apart and then the state hands them the license and helps her turn the children into pawns to use to her advantage, that she goes really full bore golden uterus after the marriage is over, and then uses the kids, and suddenly she becomes not just the one who knows what's best for the kids, but she's considers herself a deity that can't even be questioned about the kids, that any attempts to parent your own children after the divorce are going to be challenged by her, will be twisted into stories of abuse if you she won't put up with you having different boundaries and limits in your home than she has in hers. And in fact, if you are remarried to a woman who has children, she will often insist that her children have to live by the same rules as your children. So she's expanded this sort of domain of influence and power, not just to her own kids and to her ex-husband, but to her ex-husband's new partner and their children. And that becomes sticky. That's when things start really getting nasty, and it becomes destructive in the second relationship, just like it was in the first.
Or there are cases where the golden uterus mom will insist that if you haven't married yet, that your new girlfriend is not to be around the children at all, not to act as an adult figure or disciplinary figure in any way. Now, if you're living with this woman, your new girlfriend, presumably if she's your spouse, you'd be living with her, but you know, she doesn't have to act as a parent, but your new partner does have a right to be respected in the home that she shares with you, or just even in her relationship with you. But oftentimes the first, the ex who has these issues will encourage the children to be disrespectful to your new partner. Will tell the kids, you don't have to listen to her, and if your father or his new wife or girlfriend, basically, however they word it, but it's not uncommon for the kids they misbehave, they get a consequence, they don't like the consequence, they'll call golden uterus mom, and mom will come pick them up and take them home. So you can't even really discipline the kids or teach them the lessons you would like to teach them, because the golden uterus will empower the kids to say, well, if you take my Xbox away because I was disrespectful to you and stepmom, then I'm just going to call mom and go back over there. So what often happens then is that fathers and their partners are reluctant to even set healthy, normal limits and boundaries with the kids, because the kids will just go back to their golden uterus mom's house, who's going to enable this stuff.
Let me say something before I forget it. And I had planned to say this during this chat, and I really want to say it without forgetting it. Ladies out there, being able to get pregnant and deliver a child does not prove that you have wisdom. It really doesn't. And sometimes it can be proof that you don't. But it never proof that you have wisdom. There's no such thing as a woman's instinct for parenting being better. There's no such thing as your experience carrying that child. I've heard women talk 15, 18 years after they've had a baby. I carried you inside me for 9 months. You're more a part of me than you are your father. I'm the one who bore you. I'm the one who went through pain with you. And that is, to me, a real big golden uterus thing for shaming kids for having being born to begin with. I mean, and that happens, folks. It does. There are women out there that say, I suffered for you. I was the one that carried you. You owe me. These are crazy women. They're crazy, 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 crazy. And part of what we're trying to do here is to figure out how to say goodbye to it. Because one thing you're not going to do, you're not going to convince the golden uterus that she's not golden. Talk about some women think it's lined with gold. that extends into the motherhood realm too, with a pretty fair number of women, and especially post-divorce. But there's no special wisdom there, and the point is, what do we do with this? We got a kid that's acting out, trying to please mom, has been given. The golden uterus is given permission to disrespect the new stepmother, to disrespect their father, not just permission, but encouraged and rewarded for, and sometimes punished if they don't act disrespectfully by the golden uterus withdrawing and shaming them some more until they get in compliance. And so the trick there is, how do we intervene in this? And I think it goes back to the father to begin with. Dr. T, when you said that men would get in this place where they felt like they couldn't even comfortably set limits because the kid would say, I'm going home, or to my real home, I'm going back to my mother if you're going to confiscate my Xbox and give me any kind of consequences. My response to that is, don't let the door hit you in the ass, or no, this is the visitation time. I'm taking your Xbox, and now for this little routine, you're going to spend the rest of your time in the room. You can go in there and watch TV and sit by yourself, but you're not leaving here. But either way, my opinion is, anyway, and I want to certainly hear yours, is that the father failing to assert himself as an authority figure because he fears conflict with the ex-wife or fears her retribution only feeds her power more.
It does, and it also enables and empowers the children to misbehave, to act out, to model the entitlement that their mother exhibits. It can get even worse. I have cases I'm working on one right now, as a matter of fact, where dad and stepmom enforced what I think is a perfectly reasonable, healthy consequence for bad behavior. The child was given extra chores, and mom called children's services and her attorney to complain that basically the father was engaging in unfair child labor practices because the kid had to go rake some leaves. Punishment for acting out.
What, did he have a factory set up, a sweatshop?
He was the child of making Nikes. Sent him to Kathy Lee Gifford's factory. No, I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. So one of the things that you may notice is that, and I think it was Paul who mentioned it earlier, is that crazy golden uterus mom will expect you to have the exact same rules, guidelines, expectations in your own home. And that's one of the first things I discuss with couples and dads that I'm working with. Your house, your rules. You don't get to call the shots in her home. She doesn't get to call the shots in your home. Now, obviously, if there are things going on that are endangering the children, then you do have to take some kind of action, preferably through the courts. Like if crazy golden uterus mom is glugging wine all day long and passed out when the kids get home from school. You're going to need to document that, prove it.
But we better point out that that does not include being made to rake some leaves in the yard.
That's correct. But for, you know, I think giving children additional chores as a form of punishment for misbehavior or taking away privileges is perfectly acceptable. It's not cruel, it's not abusive. But Golden Uterus Mom will enable the children in making those claims because it's just a way to drive a wedge into your relationship with them, and to have control over your life. So the first thing is your home, your rules. She doesn't get to intrude on that, and this is why in our book, Say Goodbye to Crazy, we strongly advocate for having or adopting a parallel parenting model if you've got a co-parent, which you can't really co-parent with Golden Uterus because co implies collaboration and
cooperation.
Other words that begin with the letter CO that Crazy just doesn't do. Okay. So
well, there are words that start with C that come to mind, but we won't go all the way there.
The second letter is a different vowel.
Yes, it is.
But parallel parenting, for anyone who doesn't know, you can Google this. There are lots of articles about parallel parenting out there in books. I have several articles on Shrink for Men about parallel parenting. Basically, you parent around, not with the other parent. So when the kids are with you, your rules, you do what you want, and you don't interfere with mom, and it's supposed to apply the same in regard to you. But of course, you know, oftentimes women who have these issues, control is a big issue in addition to everything else. And Crazy Golden Uterus Mom will essentially try to control how you parent when the kids are with you. And that's one of the first things you need to put a stop to.
Yeah, let's go back for a moment because I want to say it again. I want people to hear this. Guys, Crazy does not co-parent. Crazy doesn't co-anything, especially things like parenting.
She co-opts. She tries to
co-opt. Yeah, and she coerces.
And controls.
I
could keep going all day.
And frequently cocaine, but there is.
Can't prove
he
that.
doesn't share parenting with people. She didn't know how to parent together in the marriage because she's one that would allow triangulation and play the kids against the father. And so she's certainly not going to do it afterwards. So your attempts to get her to cooperate with you in parenting children are wasted effort. And this is why we put a lot into the book about it. There is a great wealth of information at shrinkformen.com about parallel parenting. And what it means is you're on your own track. But here's the rub to me, Dr. T, and what it boils down to is that we have to be honest about this. And it probably upsets some guys, and I understand it. But this phenomena of golden uterus is about really bad mothering. And the only solution is really good fathering. And in being a father, in that case, that means having boundaries, having limits, having self-control, and being willing to say no, and indeed being willing to face conflict and turmoil from your ex for the sake of your children, for the sake of being able to provide good parenting. If you're not confronting this because you don't want conflict and you're allowing your children to come there and run your home and to boss adults around and to act out with impunity, I'm sorry, that's bad fathering. It is. And I understand how it gets there. I mean, these are guys that have been through years of emotional abuse. They have become conditioned to keep their head down and their mouth shut and not say anything. And so it's not like I'm saying that with this, oh, you're a terrible father, judgmental tone. That's not it. But it's important to recognize that your kids do need better than that. They need somebody that stands up for what they need, because what kids need is boundaries. They need discipline. They need expectations of their behavior. If they're going to go through,
they need a parent. They need a parent and not an enabler or an accomplice or a peer.
Or frankly, a coward. They don't need any of that stuff. They have to have somebody that's going to stand up for what they need. And the father, in that case, when you've got a golden uterus, the only hope for those kids to have a good parent is going to be a good father. And so it's important to learn about things like parallel parenting. You can go right now to Dr. T's site and you can learn a lot about or just Google parallel parenting and see what pops up there. You're going to end up on her site, and maybe a couple of other places. But this idea of putting a boundary around your home and a boundary around your relationship with your partner and around your family, and a boundary that you have with your children, that there's things you'll accept and things you won't accept. If you're boundaryless in the whole thing, then crazy runs amok on that, and then you get more of what you've been getting. Sometimes you just got to go to war.
And think of it this way: doing nothing does not help your children prepare for adulthood. Okay, and that's, in my opinion, there are many responsibilities of a parent, many tasks for a parent, but one of the prime obligations you have as a parent is to prepare your child to function as an adult. And what's your kid gonna do when they're 24 and at their first real job and their boss gives them some feedback they don't like? Are they gonna call mom and have her take care of it? I mean, so it's going along with this either out of fear of conflict or because you're afraid that'll mean even less time with your kids, which is a really legitimate fear. I understand that, because you probably have so little time with your kids anyway that having consequences for misbehaving means you're going to have even less time. But when you do that, you're not teaching your kids the lessons they need to learn in order to successfully move out of childhood and into adulthood. And that is what having a mom who does that. I worked in university counseling for a number of years, and it was always a source of amusement and also some contempt and disgust when I would get a parent calling to complain about, well, they spoke to the professor and why didn't little Susie get an A on her economics course? Well, little Susie only went to a third of the classes, handed in subpar work, and got the grade she deserved. Yet there would be parents calling for their children who were over 18, calling and emailing college professors to complain about the grade they got and that it wasn't fair, and they always made A's, so they should have an A, regardless of whether or not they did the work.
Well, yeah, I guess it's kind of hard to land a helicopter when they turn 18 for some people.
Oh, helicopter moms. Helicopter parents.
Well, you know, I've heard it said, and I really absolutely agree with it, and it's one of those sort of tough love kind of statements, but I really think it's true, that the measure of a good parent is how well your child can do without you.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that children get there is being taught responsibility and accountability. They're in being taught self-control, and being taught that the rules say no a lot of times in life, because as we all know, when you get to be an adult, you still continue to get no's, and you have to deal with that. But I really feel for the kids in this. I know I may sound like I'm somewhat unsympathetic. I'm very unsympathetic to the golden uterus, and I've got maybe some judgmental feelings about dads that allow that to happen. But who I really feel for in this thing is the kids, because they're not getting what they need at what parents are supposed to do, which is to prepare them for life and in autonomy. And it doesn't happen. If you're calling the college because your kid got a C, oh man, please. I mean, that's, and I'm not saying there won't be men that do that too, because I'm sure there are.
There are. Well, I think of it as the narcissistic enabling parent. What do you mean my child didn't get an A?
Yes, of course. Don't you know I have, from high school, I still have a bumper sticker on my car that my child is an honor student. I want to shoot everybody that has that bumper sticker. I just want it to be known. I really don't want to physically shoot them, but maybe choke them a little. I don't know. But when I see those bumper stickers about my kid is this and that, folks, get over it. I mean, you know, quit. Do something to accomplish. Put your bumper sticker about something you did, and let your kid have their own life.
I didn't raise an entitled little brat. How about a bumper sticker that says that? My snowflake isn't any more special than your snowflake. Interesting.
I want to see a bumper sticker that says, my kid got a C in macroeconomics.
Right. What it would be, actually, maybe this is an idea for a future show. What I have noticed through friends I have, women friends I have, whose husbands have an ex-golden uterus, are Facebook memes about being a mom. And I swear to God, it's reading some of these memes, it's very telling. Like one of my recent favorites, or not favorite in the sense that I thought it was particularly wise, but just, oh my God, was a meme that said, if your children aren't your best friend, you're doing something wrong. Now that is a golden uterus meme. And let me tell you, if you are your children's best friend and vice versa, you are most definitely doing something wrong as a mom or a father. Again, you're supposed to be a parent, not a bestie. Moms who take those kissy face duck selfies with their daughters, again, I throw up a little bit in my mouth every time I see those. Memes about how being a mom is the hardest job there is. It's just, and for at least the Facebook profiles of the women who are posting these that I've looked at, they post them all day long. So my question is, when are you getting time to mother if you're posting memes about motherhood for the greater percentage of your day? And they also post these memes in a passive aggressive fashion to communicate with their exes. It's absolutely fascinating. Maybe we'll do a future show on golden uterus Facebook memes.
Oh, that
what
would be funny. We could do that. Absolutely.
Send us our favorite golden uterus Facebook memes.
And I'll take a moment to rip off Bill Burr too on this, because he had a great line, is that, look, folks, any job you can do in your pajamas is not the hardest job in the world. It's just not. It's hard to be a parent. I'm not taking that away from anybody, but this grandiose tornado of just gynocentric self-absorption of I'm a mother. Mothering is the biggest job in the universe. No, it's not. And you would think that it is easy as it is to be a good parent if you're consistent and you're internally together, that a lot more people would do it. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And it's especially not the case when you've got it out and open in public, mothers using their children as pawns. Let me tell you a quick story that is just, I mean, points out that this has happened to a friend of mine. He's passed away 2 years ago now. But he was divorced, had been divorced for quite some time. And of course, she had managed to alienate the daughter completely at that time. He was still close with his son. The son managed to escape her little clutches. But he went single for 6, 7 years after the divorce, didn't even date anybody. All he did was try to work things out with his kids. That was his constant routine, was trying to reconnect with his daughter when there was no hope there. Well, he finally started dating, and he got himself a girlfriend. And the moment he got a girlfriend, he was walking out of his office one evening to go home, and his ex-wife was standing there with both children with a big sign that said, "You can come home now."
Oh my God.
And to his credit,
6.0 on the crazy Richter scale, by the way.
yes, this woman was, I mean, we're not going to make the show about her, but she is a real good example of what we're talking about. Imagine the callousness towards your children, of not having the decency to, if you wanted to reunite with your ex, to go to them privately and talk things out and have an agreement made. And what she did was put him in a position where he told her no. And she had to pile the kids back in the car. And then, of course, she started in with, "See, your dad doesn't want you."
Yep. No, actually, Dad doesn't want you. The kids he wants to have, except this is another trait of the golden uterus. She will make the kids as part of some twofer package. If you want to have a relationship with the children, you have to go through her and have a relationship with her. You can't have, and even if you're married, I see this with clients who are still married, is that these women insert themselves in the middle of the relationship between the father and the children. That's not healthy. Each parent should have his or her own relationship with the kids without the other parent being in the middle of it. Paul mentioned earlier, often you'll see this before divorce even happens. These are the women who will micromanage how you interact with the kids, how you take care of them, how you discipline them. And of course, the way you do it is rarely right in their eyes. And they don't talk to you about it in private and say, "Well, when you told Zach this, here's how I would have handled it." And by the way, there are lots of ways to parent. There's not one exactly right way. And just because your wife or ex believes her way is the only way and the right way does not mean that it's true. But they won't even do that in private, so that you and mom and dad appear as a unified front in front of the children, which is important. They'll do it right in front of the kids, and what that teaches the kids is that dad has no authority. It's mom. And that is the respect killer. I have clients.
I would call that enthusiastic agreement.
Stop. There's a squirrel in the floorboards, and every now and again they go and bark at the floor vent.
You know what? This is free TV. It just happens. It happens like it happens.
My dogs bark. Donate some money so I can get a studio. Otherwise,
well, at least a dog sitter.
Back to my point, which is, what that does is essentially teach your kids that you don't have any real authority, and it's okay to be disrespectful to you. And I have worked with men whose children as young as 6 have said, "Daddy, why is mommy so mean to you?"
And if your kid is saying that, that means your kid is being abused psychologically and emotionally. If they're seeing either parent abused by the other, this is where children get their ideas about what relationships are about, what they're supposed to be. And with the golden uterus, the parent, the mother teaches them, and understand why I feel so much sympathy for these kids. Because look, they're just trying to survive. They have one parent telling them,
Hey. I'm so sorry. Next time I'm going to put them out on the deck.
Are your dogs by any chance female?
They're both female.
Do you have a golden doggy uterus over there?
Hold on. I'm going to put them on the deck. and they can to their heart's content out there. I am so sorry. Hold on.
Well, if they were my dogs, I wouldn't put them on the deck. I'd just deck them. Okay. The quote miners can talk about me and cruelty to animals now. That's okay. But yeah, there are, I forgot where we were.
I remember, and the noisy one is now outside looking through the door like, what'd I do?
Anyhow, so where were we?
Oh, good freaking Lord. The beauty of doing this during the day is that I have a somewhat better internet connection. Although the perk at night is that they can't see outside at whatever it is they're barking at. We were talking about undermining the dad and teaching the kids to disrespect you, to disrespect their fathers. So we can go back to that, but as a mental note to both of us, I also want to talk about identity issues in the Golden Uterus. So.
Okay, but first let's finish up on that subject about teaching the kids, because again, we're talking about the family unit, whatever it is, whether it's broken together, that is where kids learn about relationships. And so you've only got a couple of possible outcomes out of this. Let's take, for instance, the son. He learns that if he's going to have mother's approval, mother's support, mother's love, when it really gets down to it, he's going to have to be abusive toward his father, disrespectful. And so what he learns in relationships is going to go probably one or two ways. Well, there is a third way, but one way is that he will grow up and marry somebody just like his mother, and she will boss him around and abuse him. They'll end up divorced, and he'll end up in the same shoes his dad was in. Or he'll grow up and take his mother's role and become the dominant force and become abusive himself in that form of dysfunction in a relationship. And the third, and I would point out to be the least likely option, is that he will grow up and look back and process all of this shit out of his system and end up with the skills to have a relationship that isn't based on humiliating other people and shaming them, or being humiliated and shamed and abused. But that is the least likely option in my experience. Most likely, they're going to take on the role of one of the two parents and act that out through a series of failed relationships, which is what people are doing nowadays. This is what they do.
Or they become relationship avoidant altogether. And
in some cases, that would be a good thing. I know there's a lot of MGTOWs are, because that's the way that stuff rolls. But yeah, let's talk about that though, what you brought up in terms of identity issues.
Sure. Someone with a golden uterus complex attitude, whatever you want to call it, I just think it's another version of narcissism, frankly. And the helicopter parents, that's what I would call high anxiety parents, which can also be another form of narcissism, but I digress. But, we're talking about a woman who allows her identity to solely become that of mother, which mother is should just be one facet of who you are, not your only or primary source of identity, because that's not healthy. Because guess what? Eventually your kids will grow up and you're not going to have to breastfeed them anymore, literally or psychologically, or you shouldn't have to. And you're not going to have to drive them to their extracurriculars and to and from school and all of those other things that you're taking, hinging your identity on. That is not healthy. Focusing on your children and leading them to believe that they are the center of the universe, not just your universe, but should be that they are the center of everyone else's universe, is not healthy. And it is doing a disservice to your children. Because whether you want to acknowledge it or not, your kids aren't the center of the universe, and neither are you. Of course, if you're a golden uterus, you're probably not watching this, or if you are, that just really set you off. That's okay.
Well, if you are, you're leaving a nasty comment right now saying you're not watching any more of this.
That's right. But what seems to occur with these individuals is that their primary source of identity becomes, I am a mom. And that doesn't stop. And what happens, and what I've seen happen, is that these women will often, and I'm not saying they do this consciously, but in essence what they do is they parent in ways, or misparent in ways, that cause the children to become overly dependent on them, sometimes to the point where the children are actually infantilized, and you have 12-year-olds co-sleeping with mommy, still sucking their thumbs, afraid to do things. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was 14, 15, I couldn't spend enough time out of the house with my friends, and I wanted more and more freedom.
Well, I can tell you for sure that the one mortal fear I had at 14 or 15 was being seen in public with my parents.
Exactly. Facebook had been a thing. When I was 14 or 15, I would not be posting pictures of my mom making burgers. It would have been the last thing I wanted to do. At the age of, I think, 37 or whatever the hell, I opened a Facebook account. I was like, don't post stuff on my wall, Mom. Just don't do it.
Well, I think it's important to stop and take a look at that too for just a moment, because, you know, adolescence is a time when children are supposed to begin to individuate. That is when they start moving toward the area of young adulthood, where they start having yearnings for independence and freedom and autonomy, and it's perfectly healthy. It's often hurtful to parents when their children start separated and moving away from them emotionally in many ways. And of course, you know, all teenagers go through that phase where their parents are the stupidest people that ever lived. Ever,
yes.
But they're supposed to go through that. That's normal adolescence. What is it we used to say, Dr. T in the field, the psychopathology is adolescence? Well, that's sort of what...
I had a professor describe adolescence as a period of transient personality disorders.
Yes, multiple personality disorders all at once every 5 minutes. But it is a part of that growth and individuation, and you're not supposed to be sleeping with your mom when you're in your teens or even pre-teens. You're supposed to be like sleeping with yourself your whole life, or with an adult partner that you're connected to in a more appropriate way than a parent. But you're not supposed to be doing all that stuff. But what we see in the Golden Uterus all the time is that there's absolutely no sense of boundaries whatsoever.
Mom wants to continue to be needed and the priority. And that's what you touched on earlier with the mom. So I carried you for 9 months and I was in labor for 72 hours and no one will ever love you like I do.
And I refused to take any pain medication because I wanted to feel the agony of having you. Yeah, and there is a mirrored infantilization too that I think occurs, that not only are the children infantilized in one way by these inappropriate relationships with mom, and it is, let's call it what it is, it's emotional incest. That's exactly what it is. And at the same time, the mom is making sure that she's infantilized too. She will, in other emotional situations, she will put the child in the role of an adult. The mother that will be sleeping with a 14-year-old son is the woman who will be sending him to disrespect the father on her own behalf and putting him in an authority, in an adult position, so that she doesn't take responsibility for what's happening. So there is just, I mean, it gets really messy when you start picking apart the dynamics of these relationships. You see this emotional incest bonding, and it turns both people dysfunctional that are involved in it, and all the more need for a strong father when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, in terms of what motivates that behavior. If a woman is getting her primary source of identity, recognition, attention, public validation, which is what all the Facebook mommy memes are about, you know, validate me as a mommy, like. What happens when your kids are no longer dependent on you emotionally, physically, financially? That's a huge loss. And let's face it, for these women who are doing this, if their sole source of identity and meaning in the world and attention and recognition is from being a mom, they don't want that to end. So there is psychological motivation for them to keep these kids dependent on them even after they're adults.
And let's be clear on something, because one of the things I anticipate that somebody will level the accusation that you're dissing motherhood, which is, of course, completely asinine and ridiculous. What we're talking about here is that, you know, the same thing applies to men. If you just see yourself in the role of a protector, provider, if that becomes your identity and there's nothing else to you, then that's going to end up badly for most men. It really does. That's why guys work themselves into early graves. That's why they end up with tons of stress. That's why we see such a high suicide rate in men, because they become human doings, not human beings. Their whole identity is tied up in what they do. And the same thing happens with moms. What's interesting with moms, when they put too much into it, so to speak, putting too much into it, they're putting stuff into the identity, and they're talking about how being a mother is the hardest job in the world. But guess where most of them are talking that way? It's in the 4 to 5 hours a day they're spending at Cafe Mom, chatting and trading posts with other women who identify with being nothing else. And they're basically putting on a strut show for each other about how everybody else is the greatest mom, and they get into cat fights with each other and everything else. They got time for all that, but they don't have time to sit down and honestly evaluate their relationship with their children or their ex or anything else. This is a level of crazy. Again, we say this in the book a lot. We say it like 1,900 times. Don't try to fix that. You can't, you're not going to fix that. You don't have, if there was a way to fix that, I'd be a multi-billionaire right now. You can't do that. The only thing you can do is try to get good fathering to a child who needs it, because you'll never fix a personality disorder. Here comes the borderlines, but that's okay, because that's what a lot of golden uteri are.
Yeah, and narcissists and histrionics and who knows what else. But
nobody would say a mothering is a bad role. It's a great thing to do. It's a wonderful thing to do. But if that's all you are, if you don't see yourself as anything else, then just like Dr. C said, what are you after your children leave home? You're somebody.
Well, and not just that, I'm going to push it one step further, you know, and agree with me or not, I would argue that a lot of these women who have become sort of the professional mom, my child at his birthday party, all of his friends are going to have personalized cupcakes, and spending way too much time and energy. It's like, you know what, your child shouldn't peak at age 6, you know, let him have something to look forward to in his life. When every birthday, you know, what's really crazy, I'm slightly going off topic here, but do you know, like, they actually have graduation ceremonies now for going from the 2nd to the 3rd grade?
No, but I would have really been able to live out the rest of my life quite well without knowing that.
Well, but I think this speaks to the golden uterus, because who's attending commencement ceremonies from 2nd to 3rd grade? These types of moms. You know what? And I'm not saying having a commencement ceremony isn't a good thing, but that should be like high school, college, grad school. You know what? Making it from the 2nd to the 3rd grade, while that might be very difficult for some kids, you know, it's not the reason to have a commencement ceremony and a party. And again, I think that's for the mom. So the point I was going to make, which I'm taken a very long way to get to, is that moms who do all of these, the personalized cupcakes, oh, it's the commencement ceremony for the second and third grade. It's not even about the kids. I believe it's about the moms doing some self-aggrandizement and what a good mom I am. I made personalized cupcakes, which your kid isn't going to remember when he's 42 that each one of his little friends had their own personalized cupcake. That's about getting attention. That's about getting attention for these women. And it is not about doing what's healthy for their kids and loving their kids and wanting their kids to have a special day. It's about competing and getting attention from their other golden uterus peers. In my opinion, in many cases, not all, but I think in many of these cases.
Overparenting is never in your child's interest. It is only in your interest. That's why people overparent. I did not know anything about graduation ceremonies from 2nd to 3rd grade. That is like bizarre level, because from 2nd to 3rd grade, isn't when I went to school, and I know I sound like an old fart and pining for the old days when things were right. That's not what this is about. But you actually had to go through elementary school. And then when you went to junior high, that was a graduation of sorts. That was sort of the big deal, the marker. But if you turn every time they take a sip of milk without spilling it on the rug into a celebration of your kid's genius, that is not your kid's genius.
Yeah, well, no, it's not about the kid's genius, but look at what a great mom I am. My kid can do this. There's a difference.
A big difference, and golden uteri do not know this. What they know is that everything their child does right is because she's a good mom, and if the child happens to do something wrong, it's probably because of the dad or somebody else's influence.
Abandon them or what have you, yes. So we're talking about, like I said, it's a very snarky, snide term, but we're talking about a set of behaviors that actually aren't funny.
No, they're not.
Issues damage their kids. They set them up with really unhealthy and unreasonable expectations as they go into adulthood, and even worse, don't teach them the skills and the lessons that they need to learn in order to become healthy, functioning adults.
And that's where the kids of these women are shorted every time. So when we talk about solutions, we've talked about parallel parenting. And that is something you do, you follow a set of rules and you give yourself some guidelines for what you do. But that leaves the internal stuff for these fathers not quite addressed. You can say, here's the plan for parallel parenting, but the fears and the trauma and everything else that the dad has carried for all these years of this woman's abuse, and he's generally what these guys tend to do is they have to start blinding themselves to how much bad crap is really going on and what's really happening to their kids. They have to sort of train themselves to not see it in order for them to survive, because the alternative of confronting this and doing something about it also seems impossible for them too. So what kind of internal work do you think these guys should be doing in order to be able to really parallel parent or to discipline at home and build a relationship if the mother's not going to totally destroy it? And of course, a lot of times the guys don't have a choice. The mother has the kids for all the time. She has all the influence. She has the power. She has the courts.
The court might recognize it, but the court won't do anything about it or enforce its own orders.
Not against her, anyway.
I know of cases where it happens. It seems, at least from my anecdotal evidence, it seems to be more of the exception than the rule. I hope that will continue to slowly change. But it's not going to.
But try being 5 minutes late with your child support and see what the court does. Uh,
But
the reign of terror.
you know, internally, what can men do who are in these situations, and their partners, their current partners, their wives and girlfriends too. I mean, I think first of all, you have to sit down and do a realistic assessment about how much influence you can really have and how much support you can get to exert that influence. So let me explain. And you know, how much influence can you have? Well, how much time can you have your kids? If you've only got them every other weekend and Wednesday night for dinner, you know, do what you can in that time, but keep in mind that even if you set the best example ever and do everything right in terms of, or health, you know, or a healthier example in terms of setting boundaries and limits, your kids are spending the majority of time in your ex's home. There's only so much you can realistically do with what little time you have. So don't beat up on yourselves if you can't fix these issues, given that you don't have as much access to your kids. That's just one example. In terms of, do you have support to strengthen the degree of influence you have? It's like I just said, well, does your family court enforce its own orders? Are you able to get your kids in to see a therapist who understands and has experience with these issues, if that's possible? Are you able to have rules in your home and your kids aren't just going to be like, well, screw you, we're going back to mom's? If you don't have those things, there's only so much you can do, and it is not a failure on your part. You know, that would be like saying it's your fault you can't change a Pekingese into a golden retriever. That's an impossible task. So if you don't have enough time to have a healthy influence on your kids, or you don't have a system in place, either the family courts, etc., that will facilitate that, all you can do is hope that you set a good example, that the seeds will take root and grow, and your kids will hopefully have an okay outcome. But beating up on yourself for that, feeling even more guilt than, you know, your ex is probably trying to dump on you, isn't going to help anyone. You know, these situations are rarely fair. There's rarely justice, and that's just a simple fact. And sometimes, and I'm not saying this glibly, but sometimes you might have to make a decision if you need to set limits with your kids. If they are being disrespectful and hateful to you and your new partner, that might mean at some point you have to drop the rope, at least for a time. So internally, I think also what goes on a lot with the guys who find themselves in this situation, there's the guilt of, I should have been doing things sooner, before I was even divorced, or maybe I shouldn't have even had kids with this woman. But a lot of guys won't even go there because they don't regret having kids. It's just that they chose a piss poor partner to have them with, and now here they are, but can't go back in a time machine and do anything about that. There's the guilt of, well, do I quit taking mom to court? That would be like giving up on my kids. And I don't think it's in any child's best interest for a father to bankrupt himself trying to fight a battle in the family courts that he can't win. And I think when it comes down to, if you don't have the amount of influence you need, if you don't have support from the family courts, the system, what have you, is a lot of these guys are in a grief process. Not necessarily having to physically say goodbye to your kids, but letting go of some of the hopes or hopes for how you wish it could have been. The loss of the time with them, the loss of your influence on them, grieving, seeing what's happening to your kids under Crazy's influence and her mothering. This is all really hard, painful stuff, but not acknowledging it and participating in Crazy's crazy dance isn't going to fix anything, and it's just going to make you feel worse. And sometimes the internal work is about helping you to step out of all of that. and letting go if indeed there isn't anything that you can do beyond setting a different example for your kids.
I'm going to echo that too. The thing here is that there is that line that you come to that is so terribly difficult with, you know, what battles to fight, when do you drop the rope, all that. But what I want to suggest is that those things become much clearer to you what to do instinctively once you drop the guilt over things you can't control, once you drop the feeling of responsibility, and once you drop the idea that you can change or fix other people. I mean, and that's not, and that goes past just saying those things. It's a matter of really coming to terms with the fact you can't fix her. You can't make it better. Understanding and accepting that. You can't change the family court system. You can't change the laws that are set against you. You can't change the fact that she can walk into a court just about any time she wants and say he's being abusive with the kids, and the next thing you know, their restraining orders are flying and more stuff's happening. You cannot fix that. And once you accept that and you really get the reality that you're in, then clarity is a lot easier at that point. But if you're stuck bargaining with, you know, how can I angle this way, angle that way? How do I appease my new partner and keep her off my back because she's bitching at me to do this and do that because she's sick of being treated wrong? Once you get and understand your situation and sit and look at it, which is sometimes, admittedly, I mean, even in great families that are together, functional units, it's tough choices with kids. It's a hard thing to do, but you've got to get yourself grounded in reality. And that is one of the big reasons that, and you're going to see that theme all throughout the book, is it's a really 900 different ways of helping people get to the point that they accept what reality is in this situation. And then you can start building resolve. And resolve is a key word here. You can't have resolve if you're still thinking, well, maybe if I do this, she'll do that. Or maybe if I, you know, give up this to her, she'll let me have an extra Wednesday with the kids, those sort of things. Once you let go of all that crap, and start figuring out, what do I need now? I've got this other family. I've got my new life without her. What do I need? What do I need? And men have a terrible time even asking themselves that question.
And that's another identity question. I mean, your identity for many years was probably just keeping crazy from losing her marbles or blowing up or tiptoeing around her. So who are you going to be now that isn't your job anymore? And by the way, that was never your job. Okay, but so who are you if you're not living in fear of crazy and what crazy might do?
Absolutely.
What kind of partner would you like to be now that you're no longer with crazy and are possibly already partnered up? You know, what's a healthier identity than what you have been doing?
And the other thing to that too, I think it needs to be said, and I see that we're about to run over here, so we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. But the other part of that too is that for a lot of guys, some of their issues are, and we're not going to get, we are not ever going to get into psychobabble in this kind of conversation. But a lot of times this stuff for guys extends into their family of origin stuff. And I'm not saying that the solution to that is to go to a therapist 400 times and go through every incident of your childhood and experience the emotions again of how you felt with every situation and do incident writing. There's a lot of therapists that want to do tons of incident writing, but basically.
But okay.
Yeah, but you know, it's sort of like, to me, that's like the therapist giving themselves something to get the client to do so that they don't have to think. But there is a lot of truth in the idea that the environment that you came from is going to influence what kind of adult you're going to be. And so some exploration, you know, look at your ex. Did you have a parent that was like that? Did you have two parents that was like that? Did you have an influential relative, something like that? There may be issues lurking in there too, that if you can work through some of that stuff, and I'm of the school, I really believe this, that everybody's got some level of family of origin issues. There's no such thing. None of us get out of this thing unscathed because families are messy. But nobody really learns to fix anything unless they can confront their own childhood in some way or another. And that means some work in that area. It doesn't mean that you have to, this is certainly not like feminized psychobabble where you need to go in and tell somebody 400 times how you feel about your mother, because the solutions are a lot more in actions than they are in just exploring the past. But it does help you give a framework. If you can compare that relationship to something from your childhood and you see yourself behaving in similar ways to one of those actors, you can start putting some pieces of the puzzle together that will also help you give some clarity and help point you in the direction that you might want to go about fixing these problems, which means fixing you.
Right.
Because
there is value in doing some of that work, but you don't want to get bogged down in just going into the feelings or just having one insight after another. There's Irvin Yalom's who's written a lot about group psychotherapy.
The theory and practice of group psychotherapy.
Yes, love that book. And his writing is great. But he has a passage, and I think it was his existential group psychotherapy book. You can imagine doing existential group therapy. Might be fun. But there was a passage, and I'll paraphrase it, which is that Yalom said, insight alone is not sufficient to affect change. That'll only get you into the vestibule of change. In order to truly make change in your life, you need to combine insight with action. So I think, no, you don't have to spend 10 years going through every emotional impingement you suffered from your mother or your father or whoever it was that raised you. But there needs to be a combination of understanding, which is getting insight into why you're making the choices you're making as an adult, especially in terms of your relationships. 2, you do need to go into whatever those feelings are, because if you're making choices where you're dating or marrying one borderline or narcissist after the other because one or both of your parents had those traits, you're probably, not in every case, but quite frequently what I see is you're defending against the painful feelings of not having that relationship in your life, whether it was with your parents or the new embodiment of your parents and your adult partner. And it could be the fears and feelings around saying no, standing up for yourself, saying goodbye to that, of not living up to their expectations for you, which are often unreasonable and impossible anyway. And going through, a lot of the guys I work with, and this goes back to their family of origin issues as well, it's the feeling like a failure, that they couldn't make it work with a category 5 borderline. Again, that's impossible. You can't fail at something that you never had a chance at succeeding at, okay? But even then, feeling those feelings, whatever they are that you're trying to avoid, that are lingering from childhood, and combining that with the insights, it's still not enough, because you have to start making different choices, healthier choices, and not repeating what you've done in the past that has gotten you to where you are today. So that's...
Which is always the hard part. I would have pitched that again. The thing is, Yalom's book is like yay thick, right? It's huge, but it is infinitely readable. For lay people, for anyone. It's called The Theory and Practice of Group Psychotherapy, and I promise you it contains a huge amount of wisdom that in there particularly on how groups and a family as a group, but on how groups operate, the dynamics of groups and understanding interaction between people. You can learn a great deal. As a matter of fact, I would say it's almost as good as Say Goodbye to Crazy.
Little known fact, reading Yalom's book when I was in, I think, my bachelor's program, he's also written some fiction, which I rather enjoyed. But it was reading one of his books that led me to decide this is what I want to do. I want to be a psychologist.
How remarkable. I've known you all these years and had no idea. That's how I got into the work too, was reading that book.
I love Irv. I mean, in my mind, I call him Irv. But yeah, no, it was reading, he doesn't know that. But reading his work was one of the deciding factors. It's like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is cool.
It is very cool. So anyway, Yalom's book is highly recommended. So is ours, by the way. It's available for pre-order now on Amazon. And you can, we'll put a link later in the low bar for the people that come in after this is over and watch, or you can come back to it and get the link, or you can go to voiceformen.com or shrinkformen.com and find yourself a link directly to pre-order that book, and it will be released on Golden Uterus Day.
It will. We turned in our final manuscript to Amazon. It was like, speaking of college, it was like being back in college. We did some all-nighters finishing up the last of the edits. I even ate a cold chicken burrito at 2 o'clock in the morning, which is very college-like.
Yes.
Which was actually kind of fun. I had fun. It was exciting.
The only thing missing from that experience for me was a couple of bowls of ramen. And I would have been right back in college. But yes, we did get the final manuscript uploaded. It is, I am grateful to say, completely finished, and we had two great editors to work with, which really makes a big difference in that.
Not just editors, but fellow crazy busters.
That's right. Not just editors, but people who have lived it.
Yes.
And been through it and know the stuff. And they did a tremendous job. You guys are going to love this book. And I think we have run over our welcome, Dr. T.
Yeah. I should bring Lucy in before she tries to eat through the wall to get back in the house. And I
know she's been very well behaved. You ought to throw her out more often. No, I'm just kidding. Lucy's great, I'm sure. But listen, is there anything else that you want to toss in here before we wind this up?
Buy our book. Men's International Conference on Men Issues is scheduled for the last weekend of October. Tickets are on sale now. You can get an early bird discount if you purchase within I don't remember the time frame. And I'm quite serious about wanting to do an episode on Facebook Golden Uterus mom memes. So if you stumble across some, you can send them to me at shrinkformen@gmail.com or paul@avoiceformen.com. And
well, gee, Dr. T, how are we going to get anybody to find pictures of narcissistic mothers on the internet?
Just surf Facebook, my friends.
We're going to have to really dig. Not so much, really. You don't have to dig. As a matter of fact, you really have to try to avoid that crap to not see it. Yes, International Conference on Men's Issues coming up October, the end of October, 29th and 30th of October. This year in Houston, Texas, there's if you want to know about what happened right now, what we call the mega feature at avoiceformen.com is Jack Barnes, one of our associates, talking about the experience that he had. And he even tells a funny story in it about Dr. T.
You mean when he raped me in the elevator?
Yes, when he wiped you in the elevator.
He asked me for coffee. It was a joke, a nod to anybody who remembers Elevator Gate with Rebecca Watson. And so when he came to the airport and he had me in the elevator by ourselves, he asked me for coffee. It was very funny.
Yes, it was very funny. I'm sure I wish I'd had the opportunity to do that and had been smart enough to do it when I did have the opportunity. But you know what? I rode the elevator during that conference with 4 or 5 different women, and never occurred to me to ask any of them to coffee. I guess I just didn't have my inner creep tuned in enough. But if you want to,
I did make an innuendo. I told you I would join you later, but I needed to slip into something more comfortable. By that, I meant something with an elastic waistband.
yeah.
After a certain age, that's something more comfortable.
Yes, it is. And you're definitely, the priorities change in life, folks. Lots and lots of them. And hopefully one of the priorities that will change for you, if you're experiencing these kind of problems from this kind of woman, one of the changes that you get to is that you figure out that for all you know, this is it, folks. You got one life. You got one life. That's it. You're one shot at becoming whoever it is you think you want to be or supposed to be. And anytime you spend kowtowing to crazy, that's gonna be time you were spending not being who you're supposed to be. So I wish that for everybody. One last thought, since Dr. T brought up Yalan, I'll go ahead and bring up Khalil Gibran for the mothers out there, who said, your children come through you, but not from you. They don't belong to you. That's good parenting. Love them, teach them. Don't try to make them like you. Don't try to make them like you. Help them figure out who they want to be. And you can't do that unless you're doing the same thing. And with that, I will shut up. We have run over, but it was a great chat. I had fun as usual with this. I want to thank everybody, and we'll see you guys. Were we going to see them next week? Yes, we are, of course.
In fact, I don't want to make a promise I can't keep, but we are going to try to do 2 episodes a week for at least the next few weeks to catch up on the lack of episodes, because I believe it was my idea to do the book sale release on Mother's Day, but had forgotten that tax season happens before that. So we were dealing with deadlines and getting our taxes done.
And a conference.
You know, just like
building a couple of other websites and a publishing house, and just a few little things to keep us busy. But that's it, folks. Had a great time. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next time here on Say Goodbye to Crazy. Bye-bye.